moment you stop chasing people's attention, something strange happens. The people who ignored you start watching you. The people who doubted you start questioning themselves. And the people who controlled your emotions suddenly lose their power. Most people spend their lives trying to be noticed. The powerful learn a different skill. Most people believe control happens through authority, status, or force. They imagine power as something visible, a title, a position, or the ability to command others. But the deepest forms of control are almost invisible. They operate through attention. The moment someone captures your attention, they gain access to your thoughts, your emotions, and eventually your decisions. This is why so many people spend their lives unconsciously reacting to others. A critical comment ruins their mood for hours. A delayed message creates anxiety. A stranger's opinion on social media lingers in their mind long after it should have disappeared. They think they are making choices, but in reality, their emotional state is being directed by external forces. What most people fail to see is that attention is a form of energy, and wherever your attention goes, your power follows. Observe human behavior carefully. The person who constantly provokes you is often less interested in winning an argument than in occupying space inside your mind. They understand something that you do not. If they can make you think about them, worry about them, or defend yourself against them, they have already achieved a form of control. This is why manipulative people create drama, why competitors spread rumors, and why toxic individuals push emotional buttons repeatedly. They are not seeking truth, they are seeking attention. Every reaction you give becomes proof that they have influence over your internal world. The strongest individuals understand this hidden dynamic. They do not waste energy responding to every challenge, criticism, or insult. They recognize that attention is a limited resource and treat it like something precious. Instead of reacting impulsively, they observe. Instead of defending themselves constantly, they remain silent. This silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but it is usually a sign of self-mastery. They know that emotional control begins the moment you stop allowing others to dictate where your mind should go. The uncomfortable truth is that many people who claim to want freedom are willingly handing over control every day. They surrender it through endless reactions, unnecessary arguments, and the constant need to be understood. The person who masters their attention masters themselves, and the person who masters themselves becomes extraordinarily difficult to control. The greatest prison is not built with walls. It is built from the people and opinions that occupy your mind without permission. Most people believe they are revealing strength when they react immediately. They think defending themselves proves confidence, arguing proves intelligence, and expressing every emotion proves authenticity. But beneath the surface of human behavior lies a far less comfortable truth. Every reaction exposes information. The moment you react impulsively, you reveal what affects you, what threatens you, and where your emotional defenses are weakest. Human beings are constantly studying one another, often without realizing it. In conversations, conflicts, workplaces, relationships, and social circles, people are quietly collecting data. They watch what makes you angry, what makes you defensive, what makes you seek approval, and what causes you to lose control. Your reactions become a map of your inner world. This is why experienced manipulators rarely attack your strengths. They search for your emotional triggers. A single comment, a subtle insult, or a carefully placed criticism is often less about the words themselves and more about observing your response. If you become defensive, they learn where your insecurity lives. If you become angry, they discover how to influence your behavior. If you rush to explain yourself, they learn that your need for validation is stronger than your confidence. Most people never notice this silent exchange taking place. They believe they are responding to a situation when, in reality, they are exposing themselves. Watch powerful individuals closely. They often appear calm in situations where others become emotional. This is not because they feel nothing. It is because they understand the value of concealment. They know that the less people know about their emotional pressure points, the less control others can exert over them. Emotional discipline creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates power. When people cannot predict your reactions, they cannot easily manipulate your decisions. Your silence forces them to guess. Your composure denies them information. In everyday life, this principle appears everywhere. The coworker who remains calm during criticism gains more respect than the one who argues. The person who does not chase every rumor appears stronger than the one who constantly defends their reputation. The individual who can tolerate discomfort without reacting immediately develops a level of influence that others struggle to understand. They are no longer controlled by the emotions of the moment. The hidden irony is that most people spend years trying to control others while remaining completely controlled by themselves. The person who can provoke you can predict you. The person who can predict you can influence you. And the moment someone can control your reactions, they no longer need to control you because you are doing it for them. One of the most misunderstood truths about human behavior is that respect rarely appears before boundaries. It usually appears after them. Most people assume others will naturally honor their time, energy, and limits if they are kind, reasonable, and accommodating. But human nature operates differently. Consciously or unconsciously, people test one another. They probe for weaknesses, search for flexibility, and look for signs of how much access they can gain. This testing is often subtle. A coworker repeatedly asks for favors that are not your responsibility. A friend expects immediate responses regardless of your circumstances. A family member ignores your preferences and assumes you will adjust. At first glance, these behaviors seem harmless, but beneath them lies a deeper psychological process. People are gathering information. They are trying to discover where your limits exist, or whether they exist at all. What makes this uncomfortable is that many of these tests are not driven by malice. They are driven by human instinct. People naturally push against boundaries because boundaries define relationships. If you continually give more than you want to give, tolerate more than you should tolerate, or remain silent when something bothers you, you send a message without realizing it. You communicate that your limits are negotiable. Over time, others begin treating your sacrifices as expectations rather than gifts. What was once appreciated becomes assumed. What was once respected becomes overlooked. This is why some of the kindest people often feel the most exhausted. They confuse being valued with being available. Observe those who command genuine respect. They are not necessarily aggressive or confrontational. In fact, many are calm and composed. But they possess something powerful: clarity. When a boundary is crossed, they do not over-explain, apologize excessively, or seek permission to protect themselves. They respond with quiet certainty. This certainty creates an invisible line that others learn not to cross. Human beings are remarkably sensitive to signals of self-respect. When you protect your time, people become more careful with it. When you protect your energy, people become more aware of how they use it. When you refuse to tolerate disrespect, many who once ignored your limits suddenly recognize them. The deeper lesson is that every boundary teaches people how to treat you. Every time you remain silent against your own interests, you participate in training others to overlook your needs. Every time you defend your limits calmly and consistently, you redefine the relationship. The harsh truth is this: people often discover your value only after they realize your access to them is not unlimited. One of the most overlooked advantages in human interaction is silence. Most people fear it. They rush to fill empty space with explanations, opinions, stories, and justifications because silence creates discomfort. What they fail to realize is that this discomfort is precisely what makes silence so powerful. When words disappear, masks begin to slip. Human beings have a deep psychological need to reduce uncertainty. They want to be understood, validated, and accepted. The moment silence enters a conversation, many people feel an unconscious pressure to reveal more than they intended. They begin talking not because they have something important to say, but because they are trying to escape the tension that silence creates. This is why the person who speaks less often learns more. Observe people carefully, and you will notice a fascinating pattern. The more someone talks, the more they reveal. They expose their insecurities through repeated justifications. They reveal hidden ambitions through casual comments. They uncover resentment through subtle complaints. Most individuals believe they are controlling the conversation because they are speaking, when in reality they are exposing pieces of themselves with every unnecessary word. Silence, on the other hand, acts like a mirror. It reflects people's thoughts back at them and encourages them to continue revealing what they normally keep hidden. This principle appears everywhere in life. In negotiations, the person who remains silent after making an offer often gains valuable information because the other side feels compelled to fill the gap. In relationships, people frequently expose their true priorities when they are not interrupted or guided toward a desired answer. In conflicts, a calm silence can be more revealing than 100 accusations. The angry person often tells you everything you need to know about themselves if you simply stop arguing and let them continue speaking. The deeper truth is that silence is not merely the absence of words. It is a form of observation. While others are busy managing their image, you are studying patterns. While they are trying to impress, defend, or persuade, you are collecting information. Most people are so focused on being heard that they never notice what is being revealed around them. They mistake talking for influence when, in reality, influence often belongs to the one who understands more than they reveal. There is also a psychological power in becoming difficult to read. When you constantly explain yourself, people learn your motives, your fears, and your emotional pressure points. When you speak selectively, uncertainty grows, and uncertainty forces people to pay attention. The person who cannot tolerate silence reveals themselves. The person who masters silence reveals everyone else. One of the strangest truths about human behavior is that influence often grows the moment you stop chasing it. Most people spend their lives trying to gain approval, attention, affection, or validation from others. They adjust their opinions to fit the crowd, explain themselves excessively, and become emotionally dependent on how they are perceived. What they fail to understand is that this need is visible. Human beings are remarkably sensitive to emotional dependence. Even when nothing is said directly, people can sense when someone desperately wants to be liked, accepted, or chosen. And the moment that need becomes visible, influence begins to disappear. Need creates pressure. Pressure creates discomfort. Discomfort creates distance. Detachment operates according to a different set of psychological rules. It is not coldness. It is not indifference. It is the ability to remain emotionally grounded regardless of what others think, say, or do. A detached person does not become desperate when ignored, does not panic when misunderstood, and does not lose themselves trying to win someone's approval. This emotional stability creates something that many people cannot explain, but instinctively recognize: strength. The detached individual appears difficult to manipulate because their emotional state is not easily controlled. From the outside, observe social dynamics carefully. The person who constantly seeks attention often receives the least respect. Meanwhile, the individual who seems comfortable without attention often attracts it naturally. This happens because human beings are drawn toward what appears self-sufficient. When someone is emotionally complete on their own, they become unpredictable. They are not making decisions out of fear of rejection or hunger for validation. They are acting from choice, and choice is powerful. This principle appears in relationships, careers, and leadership. The employee who is terrified of losing approval becomes easy to pressure. The friend who fears abandonment tolerates disrespect. The person who cannot walk away from a situation loses leverage within it. Detachment changes this dynamic completely. The moment you become willing to accept outcomes rather than cling to them, your behavior becomes calmer, clearer, and more effective. You stop negotiating from desperation and start operating from confidence. The uncomfortable reality is that many people spend years trying to influence others while remaining enslaved by the opinions of those same people. They seek power externally while surrendering it internally. True influence begins when your emotions are no longer dependent on external rewards. The person who needs nothing from you becomes the hardest person to control, and often the one whose presence you cannot stop thinking about. One of the most expensive mistakes people make is treating their emotional energy as if it were unlimited. They give attention freely, respond to every message, defend themselves against every criticism, and carry the emotional weight of people who have contributed nothing to their lives. What they fail to see is that energy is a form of currency. Every conversation, conflict, obligation, and relationship demands a payment from your mind and nervous system. The danger is not that others take your energy by force. The danger is that you hand it over voluntarily, often out of guilt, fear, habit, or the desire to be seen as a good person. Human behavior follows a simple pattern. People naturally invest where they feel they have access. If someone can repeatedly drain your time, attention, or emotional stability without consequence, they will often continue doing so. This is rarely announced openly. It appears as constant drama, endless complaints, subtle disrespect, unreasonable demands, or relationships that leave you exhausted rather than strengthened. Many individuals become trapped in these dynamics because they confuse compassion with unlimited availability. They believe that saying yes makes them valuable, when in reality it often teaches others that their boundaries are weak. Observe the people who maintain clarity and influence over their lives. They are not necessarily cold or uncaring. They simply understand that access must be earned. They pay attention to patterns. Does this person bring growth or chaos? Do they respect limits or constantly test them? Do interactions leave you focused or depleted? The answer to these questions reveals where your energy is going. Strong people protect their emotional resources the way wise investors protect capital. They do not spend themselves trying to rescue everyone, satisfy everyone, or win everyone's approval. The uncomfortable truth is that some people benefit from your exhaustion, not because they are evil, but because your constant availability serves their needs. They may seek your reassurance, your time, your attention, or your emotional labor while giving little in return. If you never question these exchanges, you can slowly become consumed by other people's priorities while your own life remains undernourished. Emotional control begins with selective investment. You do not owe unlimited access to everyone who enters your life. You do not need to attend every conflict, answer every provocation, or carry every burden placed before you. The strongest individuals become highly intentional about where their attention goes, because they understand a hidden law of human behavior. Whatever consistently receives your energy eventually gains influence over your life. Not everyone who speaks to you deserves a response. Not everyone who judges you deserves an explanation. And not everyone who enters your life deserves access to your mind. The world is full of people competing for your attention because they know a secret.